Hello writers, come write with me. My name is Mykela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Write with Mykela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is the day of our chapter exchange, and I'm hoping to get chapters from you soon. I've decided to release 2 videos on Tuesdays to read your writing prompts from you, and 2 videos on Fridays to read chapters from those of you where I have permission to read on the channel. So basically, your work will be extra videos when I have your work, but everything else will be the same for my viewers. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then I need written permission to read your chapter on the channel along with your name or pen name and age. For your age, you can give it to me in prime numbers if you like, as I'm also a math geek. For example, my age is 3 cubed times 2. I also need permission from your parent or legal guardian if you are under 18 years of age. If you're under 18 years old and have guardian permission, then I need a pen name to read your material. Writers may send their chapters in PDF or Word format to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. Mykela is spelled M-Y-K-E-L-A. Write is W-R-I-T-E. WritewithMykela@gmail.com. I'm not making any promises to read every chapter sent to me on the channel, but I intend to read all the chapters sent. All chapters read on Fridays, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. I want to remind everyone that this story is at least PG-13, meaning if you are under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. This story is in its rough draft stage and needs many more passes of edits, but we will read it together. As you know, the title of the story is City of the Ancients, and today we are reading Chapter 10. The Truth Starts to Show. Let's start. In the morning, excuse me, in the morning, Kirian convinced Kirsha to go with him to the butcher's shop. On the way back, Kirsha whispered, "Everyone is staring at us," and then whispering back and forth. Kirian whispered, "Of course they are, because they believe we had a little fun last night. And they can't figure out why you aren't blushing and why I don't have a spring in my step. And because if they know how we act after we had fun last night, then they can know when we have fun again." "Oh, well, I'll blush and you put a spring in your step, then they won't know that we didn't do what they thought we did," replied Kirsha. Kirian laughed. Shortly after Kirian and Kirsha arrived back home, Mr. Volkov came in. Mr. Volkov ascended the stairs to their living space. "Kirian and Kirsha, I brought you some fresh, soft bread as my wedding gift to you." Kirian and Kirsha turned to see the baker. Kirsha realized what Kirian meant about people just coming in. "Thank you," replied Kirian. "And while I'm here, I have to ask, why, oh why, Kirian, did you say that Kilty was Kirsha's sister? And why did you confirm that, Kirsha?" asked Mr. Volkov. Kirsha shrugged. Kilty walked into the kitchen area from the stairs to her room. "What difference does it make?" Kirsha asked. Kirian didn't like and doesn't deserve the bad thoughts the villagers had of him because they thought Kilty was his daughter. "I get no such repercussions if I claim her as sister." "You are messing things up," said Mr. Volkov with a raised voice. "You were not ever to claim Kilty as your sister." "Why?" asked Kirsha betwixt. "Because she is your sister," reasoned Mr. Volkov. "What?" asked Kirsha. "My sister died when my parents did." "No," replied Mr. Volkov sternly. "The Ballhausers were not your real parents." "I know that, but—" started Kirsha. Mr. Volkov sighed. "Your parents were Zerian All of you have the same parents. Kilty is my sister? Kirian is my brother? Exclaimed Kirsha. She turned back to glance at Kirian. Her hand went to her necklace, though the necklace was under her dress and no one could see it. She thought, "You did not tell me that." "I have 2 sisters?" asked Kirian betwixt. "Yes," replied Mr. Volkov. "It's bad enough, Kirsha, that the dissenters already think that you are who you are." "What's wrong with them knowing who I am?" asked Kirsha, confused. She tried to remember what the voices had said. They had mentioned the dissenters. Mr. Volkov put his hands to his face for a moment. "I guess I should be glad that you are a near hermit because you do not hide your magic. But up until this point, Kilty's identity was not known." "Mr. Volkov, you are a very confused man," stated Kirsha. "I do not know magic." "Kirsha, you use magic all the time," stated Mr. Volkov. Kirsha looked to the table. "So you're saying I could make that cup disappear like this?" She thrust her hands forward and said, "Poof!" The cup flew off the table and shattered on the floor. Kirsha looked at Mr. Volkov. "How did you do that?" "I didn't do anything," stated Mr. Volkov. "It takes me much more time and a lot of concentration for something like that." "Ha!" said Kirsha. "I said disappear. I didn't say unusable. If I had magic, then the cup would have disappeared." She raised her arms and snapped her fingers. Magically, the cup reformed out of the broken pieces. Kirsha's mouth fell open. "Wow, you put it back together? That was excellent. Kilty, did you see Mr. Volkov's magic?" Mr. Volkov shook his head and sighed. "Kirsha, I did not do anything." He walked over to the cup, picked it up, and set it on the table. He got the water pitcher. "Now, when you learn actual spells, you won't have this problem." He poured water into the cup. The water leaked out of the cup, though they could not see any cracks. "So, Kirsha has magic?" questioned Kirian. He glanced at Kilty. "All 3 of you do," replied Mr. Volkov. "Together you are stronger than you are separate. That's one reason for your separation. The wise seers felt that if you were together, you might learn about your magic and your potential before you could comprehend your importance." "I have magic?" asked Kirian, flabbergasted, as he put a hand to his chest. "Me too? I have magic?" squealed Kilty. Mr. Volkov chuckled. "Yes, you have magic. Your parents gave you names that started with K-Y. Kai is a term that means magic user. It is, of course, an ancient term that is no longer in use. Now, Kirsha, from your demonstration and what I've seen in the past, I would say that your strong point is wind. And Kirian, I've seen you use magic in the village, although it seemed that you were unaware that you had used any. And of course, each time that I thought you used magic, you were with Kirsha. If I'm right about your use, then your strong point would be fire. That leaves water as a strong point for Kilty." "Mr. Volkov, I think you baked your mind instead of your bread," stated Kirsha. "Why don't you take your silly story and leave?" Mr. Volkov sighed. "Kirsha," he started. "I do not have magic. I do not use magic," said Kirsha with a raised voice. Suddenly, all the windows and shutters slammed shut. "Yes, you do," stated Kilty. "Tell him about the boat." Mr. Volkov stared at the windows for a few minutes. Their closing startled him, and his heart was beating very fast in his chest. "Kilty," said Kirsha with a raised voice. "I saw the boat," interrupted Mr. Volkov. "What boat?" asked Kirian, as he peeled his eyes off the windows. Their slamming shut had caused him to involuntarily jump. It looks like a small dinghy, stated Mr. Volkov, but it is longer and fatter than any dinghy that I've ever seen. I did not make the boat, argued Kirsche. I wished for a boat, but I did not make it. Mr. Volkov sighed again. Kirsche had always been the most stubborn. Kirsche, you can deny it all you like, but the dissenters know who you are. Why do you think Dante beat you? Mr. Vollens said the dissenters paid Dante to beat you. And why do you think that a ravenous Vaporus, a snake known only to live inside the mountain ring, bit Kilty? Do you think it happened to be there? Or do you think that maybe the dissenters figured out that you go on a picnic every Saturday? Kirian looked at Kirsche and then Kilty. Mr. Volkov, started Kirian, if Kirsche has magic, then she could protect herself from Dante, was it? From Dante beating her, right? That depends, answered Mr. Volkov. Most emotions enhance or aid our magic, like hate or anger. Those emotions could have aided Kirsche. But fear inhibits or restrains our magic. Strong magic users have to be very careful because too much fear can kill the user. The magic user's body will convulse. Then after a period for perhaps a quarter hour or half an hour, the magic user will just collapse, meaning the user is dead. Mr. Vollens said that a couple of times he had to drug Kirsche to make her unconscious when he found her after the beatings. Kirian pulled Kirsche close. Oh, Kirsche, my sweet Kirsche. Kirsche cried as the memories of her beating passed through her mind. You kids need to find the orb keys, stated Mr. Volkov as he tried to refocus the conversation. Kirsche turned around and wiped away her tears. She was glad to have another topic to concentrate on. We have the orb keys, she stated. She walked to the bedroom to get them. Kirian and Mr. Volkov stared at one another. They wanted to talk, but with Kilty there and Kirsche soon to return, they decided their conversation could wait. In the room, Kirsche pulled out the needle. She didn't know if Kirian would follow her or not, but she didn't want the needle to grow. It didn't. But the top did open, and a tiny purple pebble rolled out in her hand. Mom, she whispered. Why didn't you tell me about Kilty being my sister? She waited. Dear, came a soft voice from the pebble, your mother doesn't always carry her orb. She worries too much. Will you allow me to answer? Yes, but quickly. Mr. Volkov is here. Is he a dissenter? No, he is a wise seer. What does he want? He wants us to find the orb keys. I told him I had them. I was going to give him the stones from the map room. Thankfully, he is a wise seer. You cannot even tell such information to the dissenters. Sorry, I didn't know. What about why you didn't tell me about Kilty and Kirian being my siblings? Would you have believed? No, but now I told the village that Kilty is my sister. Mr. Volkov said that I put Kilty in danger. Yes, you did. But you better get back. We'll talk later, dear, and I'll tell your mother that you asked for her. It wasn't that I didn't want you. I understand, but she will be happy to know that you asked for her. Now go. Kirsche dropped the pebble back in the needle, and she dropped the needle back under her dress. She quickly gathered the stones. Kirsche returned with the oval stones. She handed them to Mr. Volkov. These aren't the orb keys, Mr. Volkov stated. These are orb stones, and they're supposed to be with a map. Did you find a map? The map was chiseled in the floor, stated Kirian. You found the map room? Exclaimed Mr. Volkov. Where? In the cave, replied Kirsche. The cave to the northwest? We've searched that cave, stated Mr. Volkov. Kilty found a map to the cave, stated Kirsche. A map to the cave? Where? Asked Mr. Volkov. There was a loose stone in the center of the floor in the first chamber, stated Kirsche. The map was there. I'm no fool, Kirsha, stated Mr. Volkov. I know exactly what you're talking about. There is a loose flagstone in the center of every chamber, but there was not a map. The paper wasn't disintegrating too badly, stated Kirian. Maybe someone put it there recently. Mr. Volkov glanced at Kirian, and then he looked at Kirsha. Did you wish for the map to be there? No, answered Kirsha, annoyed. And Kilty found it, not me. Do you remember the details of the chiseled map? Asked Mr. Volkov. Kilty painted it for us, replied Kirsha. I will get it. Kirsha, you are too free with your information, stated Mr. Volkov. You need to make sure to only share this with the Wyseers and not the dissenters. Kirsha rolled her eyes and said, and you, after all, are a Wyseer. She left to get the map. Mr. Volkov looked at the map and then left. Kirian hugged Kirsha. Hey, you. Just because we learned that we are brother and sister does not mean that we aren't still married. You are still my wife. Kirsha looked up and smiled. I know. I'm sorry I acted so scornfully towards you and Kilty. Once I lost my family, I did not want to be around anyone. But it seems I didn't lose all of my family, and... She stopped short. She wasn't supposed to tell Kirian about her orb key yet, so how could she tell him that their father wanted her to marry Kirian? And what? Asked Kirian. Well, I'm glad that we are together. All of us. I was wrong before. I need you. I need both of you. I was just fighting. I'm not sure what I was fighting. Perhaps I was fighting my past. Kirian leaned down to gently kiss her. He felt her shake, and he felt her grip his shirt, but she did not push away or turn her head. You will be my wife forever. I will keep you always. Oh, I forgot, exclaimed Kirsha. I cannot keep the dress. I need to return it. Kirian let her go. After Kirsha left, Kirian talked to Kilty. Kilty, did you paint this map on sheepskin? Kilty shook her head no. I painted on parchment. And that's what I thought, replied Kirian. You did not come straight home, did you? No, we went to the castle, answered Kilty. What did you do there? Kirian asked. I did my lessons and then Kirsha let me explore, stated Kilty. Kirian started lunch for them. Kirsha entered the Brocklands' shop. Good morning, Kirsha, said Mrs. Brockland. Good morning, replied Kirsha shyly. I haven't washed the dress. I thought it might need special care. I'll wash it. Don't worry about it, stated Mrs. Brocklands as she took the dress and set it to the side. Thank you for letting me use it, said Kirsha. I don't think I would have let anyone borrow my dress if I had one so pretty. That was really nice of you. Kirsha, I enjoyed seeing you wear it. It reminded me of my wedding day. You know, I was pretty like you when I was younger. Kirsha smiled slightly. You're still pretty. Miss Brockland grabbed Kirsha's hand and led her upstairs. Once upstairs, Miss Brockland had Kirsha sit on the little couch. I've never told anyone this before, started Mrs. Brockland, but when I was a young girl, someone beat me too. No one knows, not even Mr. Brockland. I was always afraid someone would find out. Then why are you telling me? Asked Kirsha. Because Cherax is nothing like the boy who beat me. Cherax never hurt me. He has always been gentle. Kirian is like Cherax. He is gentle and loving. You are very blessed to have him for husband. Kirsha, not many men could lie in bed with a woman every night for 2.5 years and not have sex with her. But Kirian never forced himself on you, though he could have easily done so. Trust him. Enjoy his love for you. And, well, it may be very hard for you, but you can't feel guilty about someone beating you, nor can you feel guilty about having sex with Kirian and carrying his child. The village knows you didn't do anything last night. You can't let your past interfere with your marriage." "I know. I'm just so scared," replied Kirsha, as her tears flooded down her cheeks, and she heard her adopting mother's screams in her mind. "At least Kirian knows why you're scared," stated Mr. Brooklyn. Both females jumped and turned to look at Mr. Brooklyn. "Cherix!" exclaimed Mrs. Brooklyn. "What did you hear?" "You told Kirsha to trust Kirian," started Mr. Brooklyn. "But she has. She already told him of someone beating her. But you don't trust me enough to tell me." "Who did it?" "He is dead," answered Mrs. Brooklyn as she backed up. "That is not what I asked," said Mr. Brooklyn with a raised voice. Kirsha saw Mrs. Brooklyn crying and shaking. She looked at Mr. Brooklyn. He was walking towards his wife. Chef Linton's!" cried Mrs. Brooklyn's. "We caught Chef Linton's beating Jenny to death," replied Mr. Brooklyn. "That's why we hung him." Mr. Brooklyn embraced her. "You women will never learn, will you? Just because one man hurt you doesn't mean the rest of us men will." Jenny Rubens was like a sister to me," Miss Brooklyn cried into Mr. Brooklyn's shoulder. "Yes, dear," he said, as he gently petted her. Kirsha took the opportunity to leave. Kirsha walked hurriedly back home. When Kirsha got home, Kirian was putting lunch on the table. "Kirian," she started. "Yes?" asked Kirian. "Are you okay?" "Kirian, we have to find the orb keys," stated Kirsha. "Kilty is our sister. We have to find the keys so we can help her." "I agree. I bought us a horse and a wagon. We can pack up tonight and leave tomorrow morning before the village rises." Kirian paused. "Tell me, Kirsha, did you find anything at Castle North Polk?" Kirsha glanced at Kilty. Kilty quickly looked away. "I found time to get in some of Kilty's lessons," she replied. She walked upstairs to the room. Kirian followed her and shut the door. Kirsha handed Kirian 3 books. She whispered, "Kilty's imagination is wild enough. It will be even worse now with all that Mr. Volkov said." "I agree." Kirian opened the top book. The words looked similar to what they used, but they were a little different. The first page read, "Magica spilis forta magica usar, fiera bicid spilis." Kirian said, fear-based? No. Fire. Maybe. He flipped a few pages. "Well, I guess this is the book that I need to concentrate on. What did Mr. Volkov say your strength was?" "Wind," replied Kirsha. Kirian looked at the next book. It read, "Magica spilis forta magica usur, Wasser bacid spilis." Kirian said, Wasser. That doesn't sound like wind. He read the next book. "Magica spilis forta magica usur, Finde bacid spilis," he said to her. Finde. That sounds closer to wind. He handed the book to her. "You study this book. I believe it is in the language of the ancients. I've heard 2 stories about the language. One was that the ancients designed the language so they could obtain privacy when speaking in front of others. The other story said that everyone used to speak like this, but gradually we changed to what we speak today. We will study Kilty's book together, and then we will teach her a little at a time." "So long as she does well with her other lessons," stated Kirsha. "Of course, my sweet wife," replied Kirian, "and I know you will enjoy holding that over her, won't you?" Kirsha smiled. "Of course." "Kirsha, I want you to be honest with me about all of this, because I think we are more involved with this whole thing than we know, and more than Mr. Volkov is willing to tell us. Today was the first time that I've ever heard of dissenters, but apparently they will go to great lengths to harm us." "Okay, Kirian," replied Kirsha. "I will tell you all I know, while Kilty sleeps. Even about the magic you use, pressed Kirian. Kirian, I don't know what I can do, replied Kirsha earnestly. Come on, let's see if you can push the cup off the table again, stated Kirian. He walked back down the stairs into the kitchen area. Kirsha followed. Kirian cleared the table and set the cup in the center. Kirsha thrust her hands forward as before. The cup toppled over and spun around on the table, spun close to the edge, and then fell off. Put it back together, instructed Kirian. Kirsha raised her arms and snapped her fingers. This time the pieces flew up and sprayed throughout the room. Kirian, Kirsha, and Kilty ducked. Damn, woman, stated Kirian. You need to be careful. I told you that you had magic, stated Kilty. Kilty, pack your clothes and attend to your lessons, stated Kirsha. And I'm going to edit that, stated Kirsha. The flying pieces had startled her and she didn't want anyone hurt. Kirian got another cup. Try again, Kirsha. Be mindful of what you're thinking. Kirsha stared at Kilty. I said to get started packing. Kilty sulked. She walked upstairs to her room, but she snuck back down and peeked around the corner to watch. Kirsha tried again and again, getting different results each time. Hello, dear, said Arik as he sat down to the small table across from his wife. They were at a small outdoor cafe. Hello. Good news, I presume, with the smile on your face, stated Arisha. Yes. Kirsha has her orb, and she asked to speak with you. She does? She did? Arisha stood up hurriedly. Sit, dear, said Arik as he reached for her hand. I spoke for you. Kirsha didn't have a lot of time. And thankfully she trusted Mr. Volkov and not Dr. Highhands. Did you tell her not to trust Dr. Highhands? No, but they are leaving in the morning. Dr. Highhands will be of no further worry. He is only an informant anyways. At least we now know that Kirsha has her orb, and we know that she will talk to us. Well, I'm not so sure she trusts us. I feel like, well, I shouldn't say. Dear, when have you kept things from me and it turned out well? Arik sighed. I hate to say this because I don't want it to be true, but I believe Kirsha is testing our word. But that is good. Not if it is her reason for marrying Kirian. Oh, replied Arisha. She looked down. Oh, she said again. If that is true, then Kirian and Kirsha aren't really together. No, they're not, sighed Arik. In the early morning, Kirian and Kirsha packed the wagon. Kirian carried Kilty down and laid her in the wagon. Kirsha covered Kilty and let her sleep. They were about to pull away when Mr. Volkov came around the back of the house. Where are you going? Mr. Volkov asked. Kirian and Kirsha jumped. Oh, Mr. Volkov, you scared us, stated Kirsha. We didn't expect anyone out so early. We are going to my village to tell my friends the news of our marriage, and we wanted to beat the heat. That's believable, stated Mr. Volkov. I will pass that around the village. Kirian, where are you going? Kirian coughed a little. To her village, like she said. You do not lie well, Kirian, stated Mr. Volkov. Kids, listen to me. Even if you find the orb keys, that does not mean that you can go traipsing through the inner forest. There are many things you need to learn. Such as? Questioned Kirian. Such as magic, stated Mr. Volkov. Come with us and teach us, suggested Kirsha. First of all, I could not explain my absence to the village. Second of all, my magic is limited. The wise seers have passed down the spells that they can remember, but there are 3 books for each magic. The wise seers don't know for sure how much we have passed down, whether it's half or fourth or whatever, and the wise seers could never have the magic of the Kai. You need the books. You can study from the books. The Kai? Asked Kirian, as he didn't remember the explanation from after his marriage to Kirsha. And just where have these books been laying? Asked Kirsha at the same time. The Kai are a race of people, responded Mr. Volkov. You are Kai. Kai means magic user? Stated Kirsha. Yes, to a degree, stated Mr. Volkov. All Kai have magic, as do the Wyseers and the Dissenters. Excuse me. But Kai is stronger than Wyseer. We're not sure the extent of power of the Dissenters. That's all I can tell you. But that is why KY, or Kai, is associated with magic user. And the books? Repeated Kirsha. I don't know. Just keep your eyes and ears open. Don't talk to the Dissenters and block out the Dissenters' thoughts. And watch your backs. You three are our only hope to finding the city of the ancients in our generation. They said their goodbyes and parted. How many books did you find? Kirian pressed. I found 11 books of interest, stated Kirsha. That's not counting the book we got from Dr. Highhands, which I opted not to return. A couple of books were on heraldry. I feel they may have some valuable information as well. Are you going to share these books? Asked Kirian. Perhaps, stated Kirsha. They rode a while in silence. At mid-morning, Kilty woke up and did her lessons. After lunch, Kirsha brought out the magic books. Kirsha read a spell out of Kilty's book for Kilty to memorize. Then Kirsha read a spell to Kirian, and then one to herself. They repeated their spell to themselves during the rest of the day. At night, they tried their spells. Kirsha was the only one who got results, but the results were different. But the result was different each time. On the fourth morning, they crossed the bridge, but they did not turn northwest. They just kept going straight west. Each day was the same. Kilty did her lessons in the morning, and they learned a spell each day after lunch. Mid-afternoon of the sixth day, they turned south. Well, writers, that is chapter 10. As I read it to myself, I put in several edits, like one in the middle of the video, right? I found some passive voice in this chapter. I had to fix that. I put in a few more details. Of course, I had to go to my book and make sure the edits were there as well, but I almost forgot that step. This is some of the fun. Writing and creating a story is fun, but also reading your story is fun. You get to know your characters, just like you get to know people, because they're become real to you. You've created them. If you're like me, you will always find something to edit, but that's okay too. I used to print my books and edit on paper. Several times I would misplace a copy, and I would print again and edit again. Lo and behold, when I found the first copy, most of the details were exactly the same in both copies. The first edit and the second edit. And in the beginning of writing a story, you may insert whole scenes. I did that, and they were the same. For the most part, there might have been a different word here or there, synonyms or whatever, but the scenes were the same. I was very pleased with that. Now, there are at least two schools of thought when editing. One is just edit on your computer. The other is save your book with a new file name. Like on my Mykela series, I have Mykela 1. And I have Mykela 1 less dialogue. So I know that I can go back to an earlier book if I don't like the edits. It is your choice on what you do with your edits, and we have so much storage nowadays that you can save your book 20 or 100 times and still have space. Just make sure you name them something that will tell you which one is the latest one. Because if you open an earlier one, then Word will just adjust the date of that file. So leave a comment below on how you edit on the computer, on paper. Do you save the edited file with a different name? Don't forget to check out my website, www.bymykela.com. Mykela is like one word. .com to read the character bios for Mykela 1. I have completed most of them. I hired Designs Funnel to do the website, and it isn't as complete as I would like, but I'm writing book summaries and bios as I can, and I'm sending them in as I go. So it's not Designs Funnel fault that it's not complete. It's me trying to get everything done. Also, I don't have bios for all of my other books either. But I'm working on them, and as I get time. I do have some bios for Operatives, my science fiction series, and I have a few for this story, City of the Ancients. Send your chapter 10 in PDF or Word document format to WritewithMykela@gmail.com. I will enjoy reading it. If you want a chance for me to read it on the channel, then make sure you send permission with each chapter you send. I hope you're having as much fun as I am. Hit the like and subscribe and the bell to continue writing with me. On Tuesday, we will discuss some writing jargon, or we'll have a writing prompt, or both. And Friday, we will read chapter 11, Questioning. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mykela with Write with Mykela. Bye for now.